A long time.
It certainly has been. Well, happy birthday for yesterday.
Thank you very much.
It seemed like you had a lot of fun out here in Gauteng.
Absolutely. We enjoyed with the kids yesterday in Ivory Park Community Center and the elderly. And later on, we're with very close friends and family. So it was nice.
So on to business, because we've got so much to talk about and so little time in which to do it. Straight into it. This will be the second time that the EFF will be contesting the general election. And you fared better than most people expected in your first time out. And looking at what some of the polls are saying, if you look at the Ipsos poll, for example, they are expecting you to fare really well. And I think there seems to be consensus that the EFF will do well in that they will grow in this outing. But you may even eclipse the DA, according to some polls. But what is your internal polling saying as the EFF? How are you expecting to fare?
Well, internal polling, including Ipsos, because we also invite Ipsos to our own meetings. And we are now sitting comfortably beyond 30%. As the EFF internally. And we think that with this election campaign intensifying, we stand a good chance of increasing our percentage.
Well, beyond 30%, I think they put you at around 18%. So let's talk to beyond 30%. Yes. Where are those votes going to come from?
They're going to come from KZN, from Gauteng, from Western Cape, the Eastern Cape, Limpopo, because those are the provinces that are the biggest feeders of our election input, and we believe that our structures in those provinces are ready for the task.
So if we take KZN, for example, and is this the reason why you took your manifesto launch to that province?
Well, KZN is highly contested. If you want to put up a battle for 2024, you can't ignore KZN. And the ANC of all provinces is put at the lowest level in KZN. So you know there are good chances of making an impact in KZN. We got in 2019 350,000 votes in KZN without this kind of attention and target to KZN. And that was a loud whispering by the people of KZN. We're saying we're ready to receive the EFF in KwaZulu-Natal. That's why we took a risk of going to Moses Mabhida with only KZN structures, because we wanted to break new grounds. You consolidate what you have and you break new grounds. And we're more than happy with what we got at Moses Mabhida, because it's a clear indication that the people of KwaZulu-Natal are ready to receive the EFF government.
So, to be fair, the majority were from KZN, but it's not to say there weren't supporters from other provinces. I was there, I spoke to a few people, and like any of the parties, and I say this to everybody, it is not entirely true that all the supporters in the stadium are from that province, because naturally others would want to attend. So it's only fair to also place that marker.
No, you can't. That's a drop in an ocean. It's 99%. So those are like us of things who just get into Vianos and Kumbis and go to KZN. But that stadium was completely KwaZulu-Natal. And then, of course, I'm not from KwaZulu-Natal. Floyd is not from KwaZulu-Natal. But all I'm saying is that the whole, and mathematically speaking, once you say 99%, is 100%. Even DNA doesn't say 100%. It says 99.9999. So you know.
So you're going to round it off.
Yes, so you know that was KZN.
Okay.
Yes.
Mathematics is a precise science, by the way.
Absolutely.
So we're going to park that one. I want to know about your strategy in KZN. You mentioned Floyd Chivambu, who is leading your strategy in KZN. Who will be the person to run your election campaign in that province?
We've now reinforced with the Secretary General, Marshal Dlamini. We've now reinforced with the former Deputy Secretary General, Tlengwe Mkhalipi. And then we've sent back Mam Renelo. You remember when we disbanded KZN, we sent Buiseni and Mam Renelo Mashavela to go and rebuild the structures. So she's familiar with the territory of a KZN. So it's not only the Deputy President. We've now sent a bigger pool, because we need to invest both in human resource and material resources to boost that particular province. So we are more than clear where we are sitting. I mean, Floyd gave us, when we came out of the conference of KZN, there was a bit of instability and infighting, So we sent Floyd to stabilize the structures of the EFF. And Floyd's entrance gave us Mabhida. And therefore, we have no doubt that he's got the capacity to take us where we want to go in KwaZulu-Natal, with the reinforcement of the Secretary General, who operated and is from that province, who understands its dynamics very well.
And so let's get to the manifesto,
Yes.
2024, and your 7 key pillars. And so let's run through them. Top of the list, as it was in the previous manifesto, is, of course, the land question. Expropriation of South Africa's land without compensation for equal redistribution. Let's talk to that. How will the EFF do this?
We have to amend the Constitution, which we attempted to do, and we were successful in doing it because the ANC voted with us for the amendment of the Constitution, and then we've had to have public consultations and public submissions, and majority of the submissions which were sent to Parliament indicated very clearly that the Constitution must be amended to allow the state to be a custodian of the land. And when the state is the custodian of the land, it doesn't mean you lose your house. It doesn't mean you lose your factory. It just says whatever development you are going to make there, the state has to approve of such. And if you have no use of that land, the state can repurpose it and give it to people who can use it.
So, as you say, many people are spooked by this notion of expropriation without compensation, most notably landowners, farmers, and they are concerned that they will be pushed off the land. So how do you, and this is exactly what I'm getting to, because if Julius Malema and the EFF were to become the government of the day, that is also a constituency that you will govern over. So how do you explain to them what is likely to happen under EFF rule?
Their farming continues, is going to be protected, that is food security, but they are not the owners of the land who are just going to wake up in the morning and remove people's graves and evict workers and violate workers as they wish. And there are a lot of farms, Sakina, let's go to Waterberg, for instance. You just have a huge farm called a game farm. There's no game in it. Not even a smallest impala in that so-called game farm. And next to it, there are communities that are living in a congested environment. Why shouldn't we expropriate that land for public purpose and for public use and interest? Because we can benefit as many people as we want. Not all what you call farmers are really farming in those farms. And there are a lot of our own people who can farm, but they don't have the means to buy the land. Because in South Africa, in terms of the current arrangement, you have to have money to buy the land. So the willing buyer and the willing seller. You might be a willing buyer with the money, but what if there is no willing seller? And the willing seller is left to stay overseas. In my ward in Sishi, where I come from, we took the land, a piece of land, huge piece of land. We now are housing more than 3,000 families. When we went into that land, the family had abandoned that land and they were staying overseas. When we went in, they came back. We told them, we have abandoned this place. And they agreed with us. And they said, you can't take the whole farm, take half of it. Many white Afrikaner farmers are more than willing to share the land.
So, speaking of, the land question does not only pertain to farming and agriculture. What about urbanites? And speaking to, depending on where you're reading, the 14% land that's owned by the state, according to the land audit that was done by the state. So if you came into government in July, there's 14% before you even, start talking expropriation. What will the EFF do with that 14% of land in state-owned hands? That 14% will be allocated to our people, because the state just owns the land and have got no purpose with it. Let the people be told, where is this piece of land and what can be used for? I mean, we must make land available for industrialization. We must make land available for residential. We must make land available for place of worship, for schools, for clinics and all of that. So we cannot have
a state owning 14% and still be a complainant that its people do not have land. We were supportive of Ekurhuleni when it was under Mzwandile Masina's program of saying the farms that are owned by the municipalities are going to be advertised and they should be allocated to the people of Ekurhuleni. That is the kind of approach we support.
Has it happened?
Well, he didn't do it. He doesn't have the capacity. That's why he was removed as the mayor. But if we do it, if we come in, we'll do it, because everything we say we'll do it, we always do it. We don't make empty promises. Well,
in your little manifesto booklet, you do refer to Ekurhuleni because you do have representation in Ekurhuleni. So that very matter, why hasn't that been championed further? If Masina couldn't do it, why hasn't it been done now that you actually are in more powerful positions in the metro?
Well, we are not the majority. You remember that we have ANC, we've got all types of political parties. So for you to make any move, you have to have the support of those particular parties. We want to insource the workers, we want to take the land, give it to our people. ANC blocks all of that. ANC blocks insourcing of cleaners, of security guards, because they use their majority to suppress the ideas they do not agree with. But that doesn't mean we can't participate. We're participating with an intention to persuade those who are with us in this particular arrangement, because those kind of coalitions and all of that depends on buy-ins of other people. But in this case, we're speaking about the EFF government with absolute majority, or with other parties that are progressive and have got two-thirds majority like President Zuma is predicting. Then we'll be able to do the things we are saying.
Speaking of, I saw that birthday message that the former president sent to you, where he also makes, that particular point about going forward a two-thirds majority to amend the constitution. Which are the parties that the EFF is likely to work with post the elections?
Well, the PAC is there, and that which we are preaching, the PAC has been preaching this from the time of Subukwe. The ATM preaches the same gospel, and many other formations that are there and are willing to say we need to put our differences aside and look at what is in the best interest of an African child. And that's the type of language we listen to. MKP now, which has come into the playing field, also indicate that the expropriation of land without compensation is fundamental. And those are the kind of language we listen to. And the ANC, by the way, which elected Cyril in 2017, CR17, took a resolution to expropriate land without compensation.
So is there an opportunity post-elections for you to work with the ANC? Because it seems like nobody really, except for the parties that you mentioned, everybody seems to also want to push the EFF out, almost to ice you out.
Absolutely.
So what are the conversations that are going on?
Well, it's the Oppenheimers. When you talk land, you are a direct threat to the Oppenheimer family. So those who are saying the EFF is enemy number one, those who are saying we can't work with the EFF, go and look at their financials and who gave them millions just in the previous term. You will realize that these are the parties that are financed by Oppenheimers. They finance every party that is anti-expropriation of land without compensation. So, well, we worked with the ANC now on this motion, and they chickened out last minute, where they said we can expropriate a rotten land without a compensation. What are we going to do with the rotten land? So as we were moving in the country, consulting our communities, we were with the ANC. Right. When we met the leadership of the ANC, they agreed when we were negotiating for 2016 coalitions, they had actually conceded to that demand, because they said, effectively, that's who we are. But the problem is the leadership, not necessarily what the ANC stands for.
In conversation with Julius Malema, the president of the Economic Freedom Fighters, talking about the party's 2024 election manifesto that was launched recently at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in KwaZulu-Natal. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll continue with the conversation and also put to Mr. Malema some of your questions that you've sent in. Looked at the first of the 7 pillars. The second one is about the nationalization of mines, banks and other strategic sectors of the economy without compensation. Once again, because I think there's a lack of real explanation of how the EFF intends to do all of this. And this is what I would dare say scares many South Africans, because we just hear Julius is going to nationalize, the EFF is going to nationalize, but we don't know what you mean by that.
Well, nationalization simply means state ownership. So let FNB be, let ABSA be, let Standard Bank be. Let's establish our own bank. And this state-owned bank must be of service to our people and offer them those services with a reasonable interest. Because the banks as they are now do not support our people. And as a result, our people are unable to participate meaningfully into the economy. There are a lot of people who work for government who are a missing middle. They can't qualify for RDP houses. They can't qualify for a bond. Who is there to intervene to help those people? So nationalization means that there will be state-owned banks. There will be state-owned mines. Let's take a mine of platinum of Anglo-American in Mokopane. Anglo-American no longer mines in South Africa. They get mining rights and all of that and then give to private companies to come and mine on their behalf. But in Mokopane, they are mining themselves directly. Why? It's a profitable mine. So the platinum is not too far and it's very cheap to access it. Why would a state give away such an asset? It must give itself that asset and mine platinum and trade with other people using that platinum. We don't use our minerals. In Botswana, they are mining diamond and they are a 50% shareholder of that diamond. But they do not have control. That's why they don't know what is the output from those mines. But the little they get from DBS, they are able to finance their students all over the world and in Botswana. They even give them a stipend. This stipend I'm talking about, that we must give graduate stipends in South Africa. In Botswana, they don't give graduates. They give students a stipend. Where does the money come from? From diamond. DBS does that in Botswana. Just next door in South Africa, they refuse to do the same thing. And they want to create an impression no one will invest when the government is involved. But the government of Botswana is involved and they've invested in Botswana. So when it comes to us, different rules are being applied. So we'll have a state-owned mining company that will be given preference, especially on profitable minerals.
So how's that going to work with mines that are already in private hands? Because you would remember that when the whole affirmative action legislation came into play, shares in mines were given to people, individuals, in certain instances. So how is this going to work now?
Well, they remain where they are. We've got today private hospitals and we've got public hospitals. So public participation through the state ownership does not close private ownership. We've got private schools, we've got public schools. The ownership of schools by the state has never led to the closure of private schools in South Africa. So why would the ownership of a mine by the state lead to the closure of private mines? We don't tamper with that. That is their own thing. If you read the EFF manifesto, says strategic means, because we don't just go after anything. We go for that which is strategic for our economy. And that's what we're going to be targeting. So that's why even the banks, I say, let them be. But they must know there is a serious competition now. The state is going to be offering our people bonds with reasonable interest rate.
And of course, I want to know, how is this going to be funded? Especially with the current fiscus, because we're talking 2024 manifesto. So if you come into power in July 2024, with the current fiscus, how is this going to be funded?
Well, let's talk state-owned bank. we've got shares in Nedbank through the Reserve Bank. What is the Reserve Bank doing in banks? Because it's supposed to be a regulator. It's not supposed to be a participant. We can move and increase our percentage in Nedbank and take over Nedbank and convert it into a state bank, or we can withdraw our resources and reinvest them in the private sector.
Nedbank or African Bank?
No, African Bank, not Nedbank, African Bank. We are the
was
shareholder.
just going to say, I wasn't aware.
African Bank. So we are the shareholder in African Bank. So why are we doing that? Why would we not take the same asset of the PIC? The PIC invests in everything, including in Koosberger's companies, and they've always increased their share percentage. Why would the PIC have a difficulty in investing in a well-run, state-owned bank, which is of benefit to all our people? So you don't even have to go into the fiscus. There's just money lying around. You just have to redirect them and prioritize that resource.
So with regard to that particular issue of the PIC and whose money is being invested, when are the actual fund holders going to benefit from the profits of those investments? Because the PIC seems to be enriching everybody except the people whose funds those actually are.
That's what we're talking about. So you repurpose it to benefit those people who have invested that money, because those are civil servants' pensions, and they don't get anything from that. So when you repurpose it and use it for the bank that is going to finance them, because my teacher who was teaching me geography bought a Corolla when I was in high school. I've been out of school for almost 15 years. He still drives the same car. I ask him why. He says, they say I don't qualify for a new car. So, and those are the investors of PIC who don't benefit anything out of the PIC. So redirect that money into the structures that are going to benefit these investors directly.
All right. Julius Malema, our guest this morning. Let's take a look at some of your questions that you've sent for the president of the Economic Freedom Fighters. Here's one from Soul City Institute. Says, what steps will the party take to address gender-based violence and femicide in South Africa? Will they commit to fully implementing the National Strategic Plan for GBVF in the party's manifesto?
Well, we want to make sure that our police stations have got sections that deal specifically with victims of GBVF. Because today, you just come to parade your family problems in front of everyone in the church office, and people as a result walk in and realize, I'm not going to be displaying our difficulties in front of people. Then they walk out and without reporting. That's what allowed GBV to thrive in South Africa. We need to retrain our police to know that victims of GBVF and rape are treated differently from other people.
But the current governing party is saying the same thing, Mr. Malema, and yet the status quo remains. Yet the scenario that you just outlined is the one that actually plays out. Yet they've been saying the same thing, that we need to be more victim-centered. We need to make sure that people are safe to come and report and not having to parade, themselves and all their problems in front of the general public. So what are you going to do differently? Because I think the public is actually tired of rhetoric. They want action.
I mean, we are an action people. We don't just talk. We have a GBV desk in the EFF. And as we speak, we didn't wait to be a government. I help a lot of GBV victims. And we always are in conflict with the police and the authorities on how they go about treating these people. Everywhere else where they are victims of GBV, you'll find the EFF at the center of that, saying these matters must be dealt with differently and not the way you are doing. So the difference between the ruling party and the EFF is that the EFF are doers, we are hard workers, and we mean everything we say.
Time will tell, no doubt.
Absolutely.
All right, here's Mfundo, who says, please ask the CIC about the feasibility of his manifesto. As a student in politics and economics, I'm struggling to find the feasibility of his plan, given the tight economy that South Africa has been in. Nevertheless, his policies are settling and transformative for a country like South Africa.
Well, we want to make sure that we open our economy for all to participate, we industrialize, we beneficiate in South Africa. And that's why you were saying, where will the money come from to do all of this? We've got so many minerals lined up on the freeways to Richards Bay, getting out of this country. You must know that the day you take out chrome, put it in a truck and take it to Richards Bay, as it goes passing all places into Richards Bay, those are jobs that are going to be created in a particular country through beneficiation. So we need to beneficiate here in South Africa. We need to industrialize here in South Africa. We need to reopen all the factories that were created by Bantustan governments. In Seshiwo, in everywhere else, there are factories that have collapsed. Why do you open those factories? Those factories must produce the things that we use every day. Why should we wait for a plate to come from China? People use plate every day. We wait for toothpick. We wait for matchsticks. We don't produce matchsticks. All of this, we don't produce television.
But why?
Because this government has gone into trade agreements with other countries. Let's take Germany, for instance. Our trade agreements with Germany says we cannot manufacture a car. We will assemble the cars from Germany. And we don't just assemble, we put money to assemble German cars. Why should we do that? Why should we not manufacture our own car? Where is the market? Africa loves everything South African. They will buy from us. We produce a fighter jet. A fighter jet. If we can produce a flying machine, shouldn't be difficult to produce a car. Denel has demonstrated that we've got the capacity to do this. Denel manufactures army vehicles. And why are we not producing a car? It's trade agreements with Europe, with America, with UK, that you are not going to get involved in this. We use cell phones. My grandmother used to use a cell phone while busy with farming in small scale farming there. And I realized when the Gogos are now using cell phones that this is in demand. Why are we not looking at what is in demand in South Africa and produce it? And when we produce it, we grow our economy and we create jobs.
But of course, you know, I'm going to park that there for the time being because I want to cover as much ground as possible because I've got so many questions around that. But Akona asks, what has the EFF learned from coalition government at local government? And if they were to be a part of a coalition government at provincial and national, what would they do differently? As far as I know, you're not in coalitions. You just have arrangements.
Yes. Well, you know, Sakina, politicians must do away with their big egos. What stands between service delivery and coalitions is egos. Let's take Ekurhuleni, for instance. The ANC says we cannot be outshined by these people. And then Masina goes to a meeting and say, if you go on with this arrangement, it is the end of the ANC. When we go to unblock a blocked sewer in a ward, through our Commissar Tembiwus and MMC in Ekurhuleni, the ANC councillor comes and block the unblocking of a sewer. That he loves his poo-poo running on the streets. That's an ANC arrangement. Why would you block people who are coming to unblock a sewer? The ANC's problem in Ekurhuleni is that the EFF is outshining the ANC. How? Through service delivery. You report an illegal dumping site now, as we are sitting in this show. If they go and tweet it now and give us the location, tomorrow when you come back, you will be giving a different picture of what we saw this morning. Because whatever gets reported to EFF, it must be resolved within 24 hours. So coalitions can work. The problem is big egos that, you know, when you're in, and I understand the ANC's problem. They were in power and they know what power can do. Now they are no longer in power and they're struggling with accepting that they are players now in the same power and they have to be accommodated. The DA is purely racism, but also political jealousy, because the DA's internal research told them that the EFF is going to pass you. Where have you ever seen in a long 800-meter marathon where Caster Semenya has got someone in front and he has to pass that person in front, she turns and says, no, my problem is this number 3 behind me. I mean, that's the highest form of madness. They ought to be concentrating on the ANC and the removal of the ANC. No, they've made a U-turn. They are looking at who's coming behind them, and we must stop this one who's coming behind us, allowing the ANC to create a huge gap between them and the ANC. So the DA realized that this party is going to outshine us. And therefore, even in coalition, we must not be part of them, because by allowing them into a coalition, you are increasing their profile and you are exposing them to the South African population as to what are they capable of doing.
So post-elections, is there any party that the EFF is not willing to work with?
They must pay attention to 7 non-negotiable cardinal pillars. If we agree on that, we're fine. We can work with anyone, including Freedom Front. If Freedom Front says expropriate land without compensation, that's the language we want to hear. 30 years into democracy, we have not made inroads in redistributing the land into the hands of our people. Those are the issues we should be concentrating on. And understandably so, the DA and them are saying we're not part of that, because they are funders and they are founders. Because the DA is a measure of a Democratic Party and the National Party, which was forced on them by the Oppenheimers. So they are saying you cannot allow that. You talk land in South Africa. You talk ownership of the economy in South Africa. You are touching the nerve of the Oppenheimers, because they are the founders of this economy. They are the founders of this political system that we're having today. That's why they don't want to lose control.
So let's talk about migration and what's happening in South Africa at the moment, and people livid in many instances about the presence of foreign nationals in South Africa, saying that this gives rise to crime in a lot of instances, feeling that foreign nationals are taking away their jobs. And I want to hear the EFF on this and your response to South Africans for whom this might be a lived reality.
I want to know which foreigner took a job from who, because you are here, you are the anchor of the SABC. There is no foreigner who can come here and just take your job and say, from today I'm sitting here. The bosses would have allowed that. So the bosses are white monopoly capital which owns the South African economy. Is the one that brings foreigners into the country, give them jobs because they are going to pay them lower wages. And then from there come to South Africans and say, these people are taking your jobs, and then they make us fight. But Sakina, since when have other Africans never worked in South Africa? Because this Johannesburg was founded by a Southern Africa, not South Africa. That's why the language Fanaka law exists. Because these people came from everywhere to come and mine this diamond that we're enjoying and gold we're enjoying today in Gauteng. So they met from Mozambique, they met from Malawi, they met from Zambia, Zimbabwe. They came together, they couldn't hear one another. They even developed a language called Fanaka law. EFF was not there when that was formed. So it's not true that this is something that is happening for the first time. It has always been. But why would you say, I don't support colonialism and support colonial borders? That is hypocrisy. If you don't support apartheid, you don't support colonialism, you cannot support the invasion of everything that came with these people. The borders were imposed on us. We never had borders. And even without borders, we never encroached in each other's territory. We always knew that here is this kingdom, here is that kingdom. So it's unscientific to say when you do away with the borders, there's going to be an influx of foreigners in South Africa. Let's take Limpopo and Gauteng, for instance. Limpopo is much more poor than Gauteng, but the people have never left Limpopo to come to Gauteng. I come from Limpopo, and every time I get an opportunity, I go home. I've got no intention, none whatsoever, to relocate my home into Gauteng. So it's unscientific to say because people are poorer and we are in a much better, relatively stable situation, they are going to come here and destabilize us. No one wants to come here. We want you, people of Africa, if you want to go and trade in DRC, wake up this morning and just go to DRC and do whatever you want to do and come back without hassle. There must be free movement of people. There must be free movement of goods, and Africans must trade amongst themselves, because only through the unity of Africa will we earn our seat on the international table where real issues are being discussed. What will Swaziland go and tell China and say, no, Swaziland and China are equal? Equal on what? But once we bring the unity of Africa, both in terms of size of the population and the mineral resources combined, the world will listen to us.
Okay.
We command more than 85% of the world platinum, ourselves and Zimbabwe combined.
So we're running out of time very fast, but I quickly want to touch on the Gaza question and what's happening in Palestine, the EFF's view on this, and of course also South Africa's stance on the matter. Tell us in a minute or less, Mr. Malema.
Well, South Africa is pretentious, the ANC is pretentious. We went to Israeli embassy and said we're going to close this embassy. We went to Parliament, put a motion immediately, and Parliament passed that motion. If the ANC is serious about intervening in Gaza and making sure there is ceasefire in Gaza, why is the ANC not implementing the Parliament resolution that said the Israeli embassy must leave because we cannot share the same territory with murderers? So anyone who supports Palestine and still vote for DA and the ANC must know that they are voting for the genocide in Palestine.
30 seconds. Why should people vote for the EFF?
The EFF is the most honest, hard-working organization that will combat corruption in South Africa, that will jail the corrupt individuals irrespective of who they are, give us free education that is decolonized and make Africans to love themselves. The land is coming, the jobs are coming. It is only the EFF that can stop load shedding in South Africa, and no one else has got capacity. The DA's government in Western Cape, there's still load shedding. The ANC's government everywhere, there's load shedding because they've got no capacity to stop the load shedding.
Mr. Julius Malema, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
And that, of course, giving us a closer look at the EFF manifesto and what they promise. Julius Malema is, of course, the president of the Economic Freedom Fighters. And this is our focus this week.